We're back. We are back. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. I can't. We've been gone so long. I hope everyone is doing well. It's been a minute. What's up, Karen? Good to see ya. It's been a while. What's up, August? Yes, coffee. You know how it goes. What's up, Tom? What's up, Speaking Truth to Stupid? What's up, Chris? Good to see ya. It's been a minute. What's up, Philip? What's up, Frederick? Missed you all, too. Balthazar, it was amazing meeting you in person. Was great seeing you in New York City. Was jealous I didn't get to see Eugene Merman. Yeah, for everyone that was at our show in Boston, Eugene Merman popped in and did a set, which was very, very cool. He wanted to. We got a call from the club in Boston, and they were like, hey, is it okay if Eugene Merman pops in and does a set? And we were like, yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that would be very, very okay. So that was really cool. It was me, Graham, and Eugene. It was a really fun show. New York was incredible. In fact, the whole tour was incredible. I'll take a couple minutes. Citizens Media is here. Jeff came up and did a song with me. Jeff is the high harmony on the Get Your News On With Ron theme song. So that high harmony here on the theme song, that's Jeff. And Jeff was at the Philadelphia shows, and we actually played the theme song together. And then we did some other music. So in Philadelphia, I'll do a little bit of tour debriefing to start out. In Philadelphia, there was some issue with the bar. So we were upstairs. It was a 3-level venue. We were in the middle room upstairs. And there was some issue between the sound system downstairs and the sound system upstairs where they were not able to pipe in music upstairs. So we were kind of like, oh, there's no music upstairs. And it was sort of weird because people would just walk into this empty room, or not empty room, but they would just walk into this room where there was just a bartender and there was no music. So they would order their drinks and the bartender could hear them. Everyone, you know what I mean? It was just weird having no music. So I had a guitar there because Jeff brought a guitar because he was going to sing my theme song with me after my set. So I just grabbed the guitar and started playing songs before the stand-up show started. And I had a lot of fun. I hope the audience did too. I had a lot of fun doing that. So the Philadelphia show started with me doing a set of music before the actual show started. Because it was fun the first night, so we figured, well, second night, they'll probably still have the same issue, so we'll just do it the second night too. Big Baby Zubas, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution. Good to see you. Lewis wants to know, has Boston gotten over their loss to the Blues? I made jokes about it on stage. People laughed, so I guess all the people that were at the Comedy Studio were over it. I can't speak for all of Boston, but I had a good time there. Let's see. Schultze says, that's awesome. Thank you. I had so much fun. The tour was just amazing. We had sold-out shows. We had 2 sold-out shows in Philadelphia. We had a sold-out show in New York City, a sold-out show in Boston. Fun shows in New Haven, in Baltimore, and D.C. Lee Camp did a set on the D.C. show. We also did a taping for Redacted Tonight. If you did not see Graham and I on Redacted Tonight, please do check it out. We were on there a couple weeks ago. It was an amazing, amazing tour. I had so much fun in all the cities. And thank you so much for being there. And then I spent some time on Cape Cod, because that's where my fiance is from. So we spent some time in her hometown, and it was amazing. We talked about how cool it would be to spend our summers there, which it would be. I'd have to figure out a way to, we'd have to get like a temporary place. I'd have to set up a little studio, Get Your News On With Ron from the Cape in the summers. I did a couple videos, just like kind of on my phone and stuff, which I had a lot of fun doing. Anyway, we are over 30. Welcome to Get Your News On With Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. Good to see ya. We're back. It's been a while. We're back and better than ever. Maybe. I don't know. That's no superlatives necessary. I'd like to think we're better than ever, but I guess I don't really know. We might be. We may not be. So, yeah. Good to see everybody. I hope you all are well. I had, and Citizens Media gives another shout out. Savage Joy from Real Progressives was at the Philadelphia shows. And at the Philadelphia show on Saturday night, we did a live recording of her show with a bunch of folks from the show that hung out. And we went into this private little champagne room in the venue so we could record there. And it was pretty fun. So that was fun. That was really fun. And wow, yeah, had so much fun on that tour. I miss it already, but I'm thrilled to be home. Lucy, and she just perked up because she heard her name. Lucy, usually when I get back from the road, Lucy is standoffish for a little bit, where she's just like, oh yeah, you left me, well I was fine without you. And then after her standoffish phase ends, she gets really clingy, and she wants me to pet her all the time, and she's like, never leave me again. She skipped that standoffish phase. There was no she was like super affectionate immediately. She just went right up to me and was like, please, just pet me, never leave. I missed you. Please stay home. And I was like, Lucy, I missed you too. And it was very lovely. And if we ever do spend our summers in Cape Cod, I already told my fiance, Lucy has to come. I was like, I can't be without her for an entire summer. She's pretty chill on a plane. She just kind of sleeps. So she has to come to Cape Cod. So anyway, my song for the day today, before we kick into the news, so I was off the grid for a little bit. I was still paying attention to the news a little bit, and I was making some videos. You guys probably saw, I would do like just kind of one story and just do like a quick little video on it and then post it. But I was, comparatively speaking, off the grid. I wasn't tweeting very often. I wasn't posting very much. And I was kind of just enjoying a little bit of downtime. I was going to the beach. I was reading, which I finished Medea Benjamin's book. Stumbled over that one. I finished Medea Benjamin's book on Iraq. I did a video about it on Sunday. Check out that book. It's a really cool book. That was my beach reading, but I really enjoyed it. So I finished that book. And I'm on to something new now. And what I think I'm going to be doing next, which brings us to our song of the day. There's a songwriter who is sadly no longer with us named Jason Molina. Jason Molina was one of those true kind of heartland vagabonds. His music is heartland rock and roll with a very dark indie twist to it. And it's really, really great songwriting. He's had a couple different formations of his music. He played under the pseudonym Songs Ohio. He also just played under his own name, Jason Molina. And he formed a band called Magnolia Electric Company, which was also one of the names of one of his albums. And he was fantastic. He was signed to the Bloomington, Indiana-based label Secretly Canadian Records, which I, of course, have a fondness towards since I attended Indiana University and spent a lot of time in Bloomington and kind of embraced the Bloomington music scene when I lived there. And he died a little while back at this point, a couple years back. He would kind of go off the grid a lot. So kind of whenever you're off the grid, which I was to an extent, it's really cool music to listen to. Unfortunately, when he would go off the grid, it wasn't just to write music and recharge. He also had some demons, and he really battled with alcoholism. And that alcoholism eventually took his life. There's a book about him that's out now. I just put it on reserve at my local library. Support your local library. And I look forward to checking out that book about Jason Molina's life. I met him in person once when I was in college. So there was a little radio station house for the campus radio station, WIUS, which is now WIUX, but it was WIUS at the time. And they would have live shows. And Jason Molina lived in town in Bloomington for a little bit before he eventually relocated to Chicago. But I think he was either in Bloomington at this point or at least was visiting. And there was a show by another artist called Elephant Micah, another great secretly Canadian singer-songwriter. And Jason Molina was in the audience. I actually didn't recognize him. I knew who he was, but I didn't recognize him when I saw him in person. But the friend that I was with, that was weird. That was an ad from one of our stories today. But a friend of mine that I was with recognized him, and she was like, "Oh my God, that's Jason Molina!" And she was too shy to say anything to him. And I was like, well, just go say hi. And she was like, I can't. And I was like, well, I will. I don't care. I didn't even realize that was Jason Molina. I like his songs. I'll say hi to him. So I went up and I said, hello. And I shook his hand. And then I said, good show to Elephant Micah, because the two of them were talking. And then they talked to us for a few minutes. And they were both super nice. So anyway, I did meet Jason Molina, and I've seen Magnolia Electric Company. The song for the day is Josephine, off of the album Josephine by Magnolia Electric Company. That was one of their more recent albums, maybe their most recent album before Jason Molina's death. And it's a really cool listen. It really captures what his songwriting was all about. Great heartland rock and roll with a dark twist, again. I recommend, if you're not familiar with Jason Molina's work, starting with Josephine, check out the title track, check out Josephine, Magnolia Electric Company, Josephine, and then work backwards. And check out the rest of that album. Check out some of his work before Magnolia Electric Company, his work with Songs of Ohio, and his work as just Jason Molina. And that's a good way to kind of get into his music and what he's all about. He was a true American vagabond. He was a true heartland songwriter. And whenever I kind of go off the grid, he's one of the songwriters I think about. And again, he spent a lot of time off the grid himself. Unfortunately, not all that was just recharging or writing or finding inspiration in nature. Unfortunately, he also had his demons with alcoholism. But he left us some great songs. I look forward to reading the book about his life. I don't know much about his life. I mean, I know I would see him around Bloomington that one time, and then I would see him when he would do shows in Bloomington. I know some of the members of his band still live in Bloomington. So I'm a little bit familiar just because of that point of reference, because I went to college there. But I don't know a ton about his life. And I look forward to reading the book about him. I mean, I remember hearing about his death. It was very sad. But I look forward to learning more about his life once that book comes into my local library. All right, guys, we got some breaking news to start out. We got some breaking news, which is very exciting. Here's what's happening. House Democrats unveil changes to border bill to win over progressives. All right, so this is happening right now. House Democratic leaders on Tuesday, which is today, unveiled a set of changes to the $4.5 billion package to address the flow of migrants at the southern border in an effort to win over skeptical progressive and Hispanic lawmakers. Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leaders met with members of the progressive and Hispanic caucuses late into the night on Monday to win over their support to pass the legislation the House is expected to consider on Tuesday, which I'm assuming is later today. The changes unveiled by the House Appropriations Committee include requiring Customs and Border Protections to establish health standards for children and adults in custody, including for nutrition and hygiene. They would also require the Department of to submit a plan to ensure that all migrants have access to translation services. They would limit the amount of time that unaccompanied migrant children can spend at an arrival shelter unless the Department of Health and Human Services notifies Congress. Oh, and also, in the statement, the White House expressed displeasure that neither bill includes funding for more detention beds. Okay. And there's another bipartisan quote-unquote bill that's floating around. Why is it only progressives or appointed progressives that want all those things? What's happening at the border is absolutely horrific. What we're doing to children at the border is absolutely beyond appalling. And that's putting it gently. And here's a bill that just calls for basic humane things that never should have been in question in the first place. Basic hygiene, basic nutrition. They're treated with dignity. Seeking asylum is not a crime. The crisis at the border, quote unquote, is a crisis that we made. It's a crisis that the brutality of ICE made, and the brutality of our treatment of people seeking asylum, seeking conditions that were brought upon by climate change in most cases, and were brought upon by our sanctions. That's the only crisis in existence. There is no crisis of mass immigration. These are people seeking asylum. And it's amazing. I mean, they're just calling for basic human protections. And they're referring to this as we want to appease the progressives by treating the people that come to our border like human beings. By not putting them in cages and denying them food and toothpaste. We want to treat them like human beings. This is to appease progressives. So this is new breaking legislation. We're still watching all this unfold. We'll see what happens with this. But they're basically just calling for basic nutrition, not separating families for too long. AKA toothpaste. Oh, and they're not even calling for more beds. Because, beds. Who needs those? This is unbelievable. And this is to appease the progressives. You're a huge lefty if you think that people coming to the border seeking asylum deserve to be treated like human beings. Man, wow. You're far out in left field there. You're far out in left field there. Even though the whole thing about this, give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. That was something that we apparently celebrated. Now you're a huge lefty if you entertain that sentiment. All right, so let's see if there's any more to this here. Now here's something interesting. So Pelosi noted that the legislation is a funding measure, not an immigration reform bill, emphasizing the importance of getting the money to the border to deal with the crisis as the first step of a longer debate. It's an appropriations bill to meet the needs of our children. This is what Nancy Pelosi said. We have to have a country where every child knows that they are in their parents' arms, literally or figuratively. Yeah, if it's figuratively, they're still going to be fine. That's... Hey, I'm a child. I'm scared and I'm confused and I'm in this cage. You are figuratively in your parents' arms. You're figuratively. Man, what a nice incremental statement that was, huh? If it can't be literally, if we gotta separate them, figuratively, they're in their parents' arms. We're gonna treat them with basic human decency, which is figuratively like being in your parents' arms. Don't you remember whenever you were scared as a child, if just a friendly neighborhood ICE agent just came up to you and said, hey, figuratively, you're in your parents' arms. You felt fine. Immediately, right? Like, isn't that how it works? Unreal. And this is a progressive idea, by the way. By the way, treating people that come for asylum with basic human decency. Not putting children in cages and denying them food and toothpaste. Treating people like human beings. That's some crazy lefty idea. The Democrats just had to cave to these progressives that were like, oh, we should treat human beings like human beings. Blah, blah, blah. I bet they want us to give them all a pony next. This is unreal. And then there's another bipartisan bill out there. None of them even call for more beds. So we'll see what happens with this. This is new legislation. We're still watching the details unfold. We're still watching the process unfold. So we'll see what happens. It's expected to pass the House. We'll see more of the details about it and what it does after that. But there's some breaking news that there is some talk of something being done about the brutal situation at the border. All right. So... And there's something going on specifically in Illinois. Christina shares this with us. Here's something Illinois as a state is doing specifically, and I think the margins are kind of rough on this one, so bear with me. But Pritzker signs immigration protection bills. All right, so these measures bar private detention centers and prohibit cooperation with ICE. So Governor J.B. Pritzker signed 3 bills into law Friday, that was this past Friday, that aim to protect undocumented immigrants in Illinois, policies that he said stand in sharp contrast with those of President Donald Trump. So here's what he says. Illinois is and always will be a welcoming state, Pritzker said during a signing ceremony at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Let the word go out from today that the state of Illinois stands as a firewall against Donald Trump's attacks on our immigrant community. The measure includes House Bill 2040, which bans the development of private for-profit detention centers in the state, putting an end to plans by the Village of Dwight to host such a facility. It also prohibits local governments from contracting or having any financial transactions with such a facility. Illinois already has a moratorium on development of any private for-profit prisons, which the rest of the country should have too, by the way. Pritzker has also signed House Bill 1637, which prohibits state and local law enforcement agencies from performing immigration enforcement functions on behalf of ICE. And he signed House Bill 2691, giving students who are undocumented immigrants giving students who are undocumented immigrants but who meet all other academic and financial qualifications access to state-funded student financial aid. Pritzker made it clear he intends for Illinois policies on dealing with immigration to stand in sharp contrast with those of President Trump. So those sound like pretty good things, but does he have a little thing in there about how children can also figuratively be in their parents' arms? I didn't see anything about that. I'm a little bit worried. What about these scared children? Do they know that figuratively they can be in their parents' arms? I am figuratively in my mom's arms right now. Like right now, my mom is hugging me figuratively. She's like, I'm giving you a figurative hug. So I don't see anything. And this is, in many ways, this might be what it takes. It might take states taking issues into their own hands and saying we're not going to tolerate for these brutal practices at the border. The government on the federal level is failing us, so we're not going to tolerate for these brutal practices at the border. Unfortunately, depending on the state, they may enact things that are even more brutal. It depends on the state, of course. Illinois looks like they're taking a really good direction. Will every state in the union follow suit? That's tough to say. So Illinois doing some good things at the border. Or regarding immigration. Illinois isn't at the border, obviously. But they're doing some good things regarding immigration. So let's go over a little further out. Here's what's happening regarding Iran. Iran says new U.S. sanctions shut down diplomatic option. This is from Democracy Now! President Trump imposed new sanctions against Iran Monday, targeting the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and announced forthcoming sanctions on Iran's top diplomat. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani derided the announcement, saying, "You sanction the foreign minister simultaneously with the request for talks." While Zarif tweeted, at real Donald Trump is 100% right that the U.S. military has no business in the Persian Gulf. Removal of its forces is fully in line with interests of the U.S. in the world. But it's now clear that the B team is not concerned with U.S. interests. They despise diplomacy and thirst for the war. The B team is thought to refer to John Bolton, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Can we just make that a non-team? How about they're just like a non-team that doesn't. I'd prefer not having them as a B team or any team at all. That's what I would prefer. Let's do that instead. All right. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State... Oh, hold on. I'm skipping around here. The sanctions came after an aborted U.S. attack on Iranian targets last week, following the downing of a U.S. Navy surveillance drone by Iran earlier this month. The U.S. says happened over international waters. Iran maintains the vessel entered their territory. Iranian officials have since released imagery which they say confirms this. At a top-level meeting in Jerusalem between the U.S., Israel, and Russia, a top Russian official contradicted the U.S. narrative, saying it had in fact entered Iranian territory. Iran also said Monday it had blocked cyber attacks by the United States. We are literally the schoolyard bully of the world. We're literally the schoolyard bully. Like hey, this is international waters. No, this is our waters. You can't do that. Nope, it's international. Actually, it's their waters. We're another country here. It's their waters. Nope, we said no. What evidence we don't care. We're literally like the school bully. Like, hey, I'm gonna take your lunch. Just took your lunch. Hey, he took my lunch. No, I didn't. I did not take your lunch. That's my lunch right there. I didn't take it, though. I didn't take your lunch. Hey, here I am. You took their lunch. I don't care what either of you say. I didn't take their lunch. Hey, you're eating the lunch right in front of us. Yeah, but it's not yours. It's ours. It's yours. We all corroborate. You took that lunch. Nope. Don't give a shit. Why are you hitting yourself? 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 We're going to keep flying these warships along your border. We're going to keep doing that. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he's on the ball. Don't worry about it. If he's involved, we're going to be fine. He's traveled to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in an attempt to build what the Trump administration is describing as a global coalition against Iran. The Iranian ambassador to the United Nations told reporters that he had been shut out of a U.S.-led closed-door meeting of the UN Security Council. Wow. All right. So Mike Pompeo's going around trying to build coalitions against Iran. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is saying, hey, we shouldn't have troops there. We shouldn't have these warplanes flying around. We shouldn't have these ships along the waters. Meanwhile, a drone's going into their territory. They're saying, hey, this is in our territory. We're saying, no, it's not. But others are saying, yeah, it totally is. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And we've been trying to get to Iran for a long time. And it's on the list, quote unquote. And you know, Medea Benjamin's book just really breaks down like everything, just one piece at a time, how we antagonized them in the 50s and then again, and then they were actually in support of us even post 9/11, and then Bush all of a sudden declared them an axis of evil. Why? Because they knew that Iran had oil. And it's about how it can all just be boiled down to they have resources and we want them. They have resources, we want them. So now you have this. You have Pompeo going around beating the drums for war against Iran. You have Trump saying these things and then doing other things. Hey, we shouldn't have these troops. We shouldn't have these ships. We shouldn't have these planes. We should de-escalate. But, oh, no. That drone. We're allowed to be there. And I'm going to back out of this nuclear deal. So that's what's going on so far. All right. We'll continue to watch this unfold. So here's something. You know, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where, man, the fracking industry has really just grabbed that region by the gullet. It's so funny. When you come in from the Pittsburgh airport, you see a sign against littering, like an anti-littering sign, which is good. I mean, littering's bad. Don't do it. But there's an anti-littering sign when you're driving into the city from the Pittsburgh airport. And that anti-littering sign is sponsored by Range Resources. Range Resources. Range Resources having an anti-littering sign is like Harvey Weinstein doing a campaign against catcalling. That's absolutely ridiculous. And the oil companies have really become part of the way of life in that region. That's the home of the Marcellus Shale, where a lot of fracking is going on. And people have been sold this bill of goods that fracking is essential for our energy needs, and it's a great economic opportunity, even though the economic opportunity is just some part-time jobs that eventually go away. It destroys the environment, it destroys the land, and all that energy isn't even staying domestic. It's being shipped to other parts of the world anyway, so it does not benefit any of the people of this country in the United States whatsoever. It just benefits a handful of CEOs. And turns out, it's not necessary production at all, something we already knew. But here's an interesting testimony from an unlikely source. A former shale gas CEO says the fracking revolution has been a disaster for drillers and investors. Even those profiting off of this, it's still a disaster. And this, by the way, this article doesn't even touch upon the environmental consequences, which is still the greatest cost. So let's see what's really going on. Former Shell CEO. Steve Schlotterbeck, who led drilling company EQT as it expanded to become the nation's largest producer of natural gas in 2017, arrived at a petrochemical industry conference in Pittsburgh Friday morning with a blunt message about shale gas drilling and fracking. Here's what he has to say. The shale gas revolution has frankly been an unmitigated disaster for any buy and hold investor in the shale gas industry, with very few limited exceptions. In fact, I'm not aware of another case of a disruptive technological change that has done so much harm to the industry that created the change. While hundreds of billions of dollars of benefits have accrued to hundreds of millions of people, The amount of shareholder value destruction registers in the hundreds of billions of dollars. The industry is self-destructive. Here's what he goes on to say. The technological advancements developed by the industry have been the weapon of its own suicide. And unfortunately, the industry still has not fully realized how it's killing itself. Since 2015, there's been 172 E&P company bankruptcies involving nearly $100 billion of debt. In a little more than a decade, most of these companies just destroyed a very large percentage of their company's value. Nearly every American, now here's where he's full of shit. Nearly every American has benefited from shale gas, with one big exception, he said. The shale gas investors. Now that's bullshit. What's really happening here is that even a CEO is acknowledging that the costs, even for these predators, the costs outweighs the benefit. They're spending all this money producing, doing this deep fracking process, and the need for the energy just isn't there because we're trying to get away from fossil fuels. So he's acknowledging this. Well, he's still selling this lie. This guy is coming from a pure industry perspective. So he's selling the bill of lies that, Americans are benefiting from this. Think of all the land rights that we're paying people. We're paying them to exploit their land and poison their water wells. So he's saying that Americans are benefiting from this. That's not true. There have been tons of economic studies out there. It depletes the value of people's lands. What they get paid off is pennies in regards to what they should be getting paid for something like that. The environmental destruction is immeasurable. The jobs are temporary and eventually go away. And again, the environmental consequences are dire. They're brutal. So this is not benefiting America. And none of the energy is staying here, by the way. None of it's staying here. It's all shipped to other places, and there's not a big enough demand for it. So even these CEOs and these predators, the environmental predators, even they're losing. Most of them, not all of them. There's still some at the top padding their pockets. So there is no economic benefit to fracking. There is certainly no environmental benefit to fracking. Why are we doing it? There's still a few oil CEOs getting rich, but there's even less than we realize. And even a CEO is realizing, a shale CEO realizes it. He doesn't realize think about all of those things he brought up. The industry's killing itself. They're overproducing. There's no demand. They're losing money, hand over fist. He didn't even touch upon the environmental consequences because he's not even cognizant of that. He thinks that it's benefiting the American people. He actually thinks the poor CEOs are losing out. They're the only ones losing out. So this guy just gave an amazing sales pitch for why fracking shouldn't even happen strictly from an economic standpoint. Didn't even touch on the environmental consequences. Didn't even touch on how it's exploiting people and exploiting their land. Because he's not even cognizant of that part. And he still gave a damn good reason why we should not be fracking. So whenever someone tells you fracking has an economic benefit, it doesn't. It just doesn't. Who backs that up? Oil CEOs back that up. So even when you look at it from the perspective of money, 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 still no reason why we should be doing it. This guy doesn't even touch upon the environmental consequences because he's not aware of them. And yet, it's hard to find any anti-fracking candidates out there on either side, Republicans or Democrats. There are very few. We did not have an anti-fracking option on the ballot in 2016 for president. In the general, that is. In the primaries, we did. In the general, we certainly didn't. In fact, when a young child asked Hillary Clinton about fracking, Hillary Clinton said, "Oh, well, we need it to meet our energy needs." She used a right-wing talking point that, by the way, is just straight up lie. That's a lie. Like, it's not even like, well, it depends on... No, it's a lie. None of the energy stays domestic. So it's amazing. Even people in the business sector are saying this is bullshit. And yet, because there are still some at the very, very top, the very, very top in oil and gas that are still padding their pockets from this stuff, they're able to buy out all the politicians. It's incredible. So there you go. Fracking. Not even benefiting all the oil elite at this point. Even they're seeing through it. Even shale gas CEOs are seeing through this stuff. But for some reason, our elected officials can't. For some reason, they can't. And this CEO doesn't even see the big picture of it. They don't even see the big picture. Just in their limited for-profit scope. Even through that scope, they know it's bullshit. Amazing. All right. Here's something kind of cool. Pink Floyd's David Gilmour auctions a guitar for $21 million to fight climate change. The global climate crisis is the greatest challenge that humanity will ever face, the Pink Floyd frontman said. Pink Floyd frontman David Gilmour sold his guitars for $21 million at an auction on Thursday to raise money for a nonprofit fighting climate change. Gilmour, the guitarist, singer, and songwriter for Pink Floyd, offered the largest and most comprehensive sale of guitars ever offered at auction. On Wednesday, Gilmour announced all proceeds would go to Client Earth. I'm not familiar with this group. This is my first time hearing about them. Hopefully they are a good climate action group. A charity that uses the power of the law to protect the planet and the people who live on it. On Twitter, Gilmour said he chose Client Earth because the global climate crisis is the greatest challenge that humanity will ever face, and we are within a few years of the effects of global warming being irreversible. Gilmour sold a total of 126 items, including the iconic black Strat guitar, which for nearly $4 million, far exceeding its pre-sale estimate of $150,000. There's some Pink Floyd fans that got some money. Client Earth CEO James Thornton expressed his gratitude for Gilmour's donation in a statement. This is a truly humbling and extraordinary gift, which goes beyond our wildest expectations. It's difficult to express just how deeply grateful we are to David for choosing Client Earth as the beneficiary of this historic option. We need a civilized world that goes on for all our grandchildren and beyond, in which these guitars can be played and songs can be sung. That's from Gilmour himself, from David Gilmour on Twitter. So I'm not familiar with Client Earth. This is my first time hearing about them. I'm not super familiar with that organization. Hopefully they are a good climate action organization. David Gilmour looks like his heart is definitely in the right place. So if they're not a good organization, it's probably he just probably didn't realize it. But hopefully they are, and $21 million can go a long way. So good for David Gilmour. You know, we talked about Monday, rather, which, yeah, that was yesterday. Sorry, I've been traveling. Time's a little loopy for me. But, yeah, we did that story about how Kurt Cobain's plate, a paper plate that Kurt Cobain used, went for $22,000. And I don't think any of those proceeds went to climate change. I think it was just a private person that was like, cool, I have this now. It's a paper plate that Kurt Cobain ate pizza off of in 1990, allegedly. But this is good that, he's using his talents and stuff that he has at his disposal for something good. And hopefully Client Earth was a worthy recipient of such a sum. And they're going to do something to combat climate change. And good for David Gilmour. A little bit of a uplifting music story for you. Student loans. That's how we're going to end today. And this is going to be a fun opinion piece to go through. So Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, too, I believe, have plans to cancel student loan debt. It's been getting talked about more and more. And here's a fun opinion piece that we're going to have a damn good time dissecting. Are you ready? Buckle in. Bernie Sanders' student loan debt forgiveness plan creates more inequality. All right, let's get a load of this mental gymnastics. Senator Bernie Sanders introduced an ambitious plan this week to cancel all student loan debt. It would estimate close to $1.6 trillion in debts in the U.S., owed by more than one-third of young Americans to private banks, colleges, and the government. The amount owed exceeds the amount owed in credit card debt and auto loans. Sanders, one of the Democratic frontrunners, wants to fix that. The College for All Act would cancel the student loan debt of nearly 45 million Americans who pay an average of $3,000 per year and subsidize college tuition for low-income individuals underrepresented in certain districts. In total, this plan would cost $2.2 trillion, paid for by new taxes on Wall Street, a 0.5% tax on stock trades, a 0.1% fee on bonds, and a 0.005% fee on derivatives. According to Sanders, those taxes would raise more than $2.4 trillion in the next 10 years. Similarly, Elizabeth Warren's student loan debt forgiveness plan would be funded by a new tax on ultra-billionaires. Now, as far as information goes, the article could have just ended there. Bernie Sanders has a plan to eliminate student loan debt by imposing these taxes on Wall Street that would pay for it. Elizabeth Warren has another tax on the rich to also eliminate student loan debt. Could have just ended it there. That could be the end of the article. That's the information we need to know. But this is an opinion piece, and they have some thoughts on how eliminating student loan debt, one of the most crippling forms of debt in our society, would somehow create more inequality. The idea that education is a public good and should be tuition free, by the way, which is something a bunch of other countries have already arrived at. And if you go to those countries, if you go to, places like Denmark and Germany, you'll hear them complaining about the inequality that people are getting a free education. They'll be like, this is bullshit. This free education, this access to try to improve our lives. Oh, except you won't hear anyone saying that, because that's a bullshit sentiment. But let's get to this article. All right. As a recent college graduate paying off student loan debt, Sanders' plan sounds great to me in theory. But, hold on, I'm having a little trouble scrolling here. Sanders' plan sounds great to me in theory, but if applied, it would create a new kind of inequality among graduates from varying educational backgrounds with differing degrees of debt, and it would be very unfair to those who have been consistently paying off their student loans for years. How? How? Hey, wait a second. I have my debt is more than their debt. So, are they getting it canceled too? That's not fair. Wait a second. I've been paying my student loan debt for years. I'm paying my car off right now. That's something I'm paying off. If somebody said to me, hey, there's this great Good Samaritan who has a lot of money, and everybody who lives in your apartment complex, they're paying off all of your car loans. If you have a car loan, they're paying it off right now. They're just paying, just let them know the number. They're paying it off. I would be like, holy shit, that's awesome. I wouldn't be like, well, wait a second. I've been on time with all of my car bills from now since I've owned my car. I'm going to go take a survey of the rest of the neighborhood and ask them if they've done the same thing. Excuse me, you were late once? Well, fuck you. You're not getting your card. This is not fair. This is not fair. I've always paid on time. My neighbor, they missed a payment once. I don't care why. They missed a payment once. So they're getting their car loan. Wait a second. My other neighbor over here, their car loan is more than mine. They're getting theirs eliminated, and I'm getting mine eliminated, but I'm not getting as much. Am I going to get... Who thinks like that? Who in the world thinks like that? I guarantee you, people paying off student loan debt don't think that way. Why? Because they're paying off fuck tons of student loan debt. And if they got relief from that, it would benefit society. Oh, well, what about me? I paid off all my student loan debt, and now they just get... Guess what? A society where education is a public good, where people aren't suffering from crippling amounts of debt, benefits everybody. I paid off all my student loan debt. What do you do now? I own a restaurant. Guess what? You're going to see an increase in sales at your frickin' restaurant. Because now... to name a few. Those who struggle to pay their debt on an entry-level salary often at the expense of leisurely pleasures like eating out, well, justifiably feel cheated. Yeah, that's where their mind will go first. If they don't have to worry about student loan debt anymore, that's exactly where their mind will go first. Like, well, what about people who had more debt relief than me? Who thinks like that besides nobody? I think the stream might have just froze.